Remember last year's amazing trip? That cute first birthday party? All those photos, all those memories can be freed from your phone with a Shutterfly photo book. Rediscover and share your favorite moments with those you love. You'll be amazed how easy it is to make a photo book with Shutterfly and enjoy it for years to come. Get 40% off orders over $29 with code POD40 at Shutterfly.com and make something that means something.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Episode 27! I'm Helen!
I'm Kobe. Welcome. We're joined today by Adam.
Hello.
And Zoe.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about the Nina Simone documentary on Netflix, What Happened Miss Simone.
Come find us on Twitter, tweet to us, agree with us, disagree. We're at Flixwatcher Pod. The website flixwatcher.tv has full listings of each episode, and subscribe and review us on iTunes. As always, films reviewed in this podcast were available to stream on Netflix UK at the time of recording. There may be bad language and there may be spoilers. You have been warned. This episode of Flixwatcher Pod is brought to you by GL Productions. GL Production provide hassle-free professional quality podcast production at an affordable price. So if you're looking to get into podcasting but fancy a little bit of professionalism to help you out, then we highly recommend GL Productions. If you fancy 10% off your bespoke podcast production package, tell them Kobe and Helen sent you for your first order. Hello and welcome to Flixwatcher Pod. In this episode, we're joined by Adam Buxton.
Hello.
And Zoe Jeyes.
Hi.
If you'd like to introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Zoe, after you.
Oh, thank you very much. My name is Zoe Jeyes. I'm comedy programmer here at King's Place. We're currently recording backstage from the London Podcast Festival.
Fantastic.
I'm also the producer of the London Podcast Festival.
Yay. First year, right?
Second.
I thought it was the first. I don't know what I'm doing. Where am I? My name's Adam Buxton. I am a sometime comedian, a writer, a host of Bug about music videos, and currently podcaster with the Adam Buxton podcast.
Podcast champion as
award,
designated by the British
award winner.
Podcast Awards.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yes, I am the champion of all podcasts. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm doing a live podcast tonight with Reese and Steve of
League of Gentlemen.
Inside Number 9 in the League of Gentlemen, yeah.
Yeah, we're looking forward because
Yeah, we're
it's
so excited.
Completely sold out.
that's crazy, isn't it? League of Gentlemen are reforming as well. Are you going to be
Are
are you going to be talking a bit about that during the show? Do you know?
Definitely. I'll talk about lots of things. I asked people on Twitter last night if they had any questions, and it was the most activity my feed has ever seen.
Really?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It's like an avalanche. So I sort of just randomly picked a handful of questions, lots of good questions. So I will just be going through those, and many questions about the new series, what it's going to be like, and then lots of questions about whether they get jealous of the other members for
writing Sherlock.
for being too high profile. But I never think about that with them though, because they're all individually so talented and they've done so many things.
Absolutely.
Anyway, but I will ask them that because that's a fun thing to tease them with.
So we're talking today about the Nina Simone documentary that's on Netflix, What Happened Miss Simone. And you chose it, Adam. Can you let us know why you chose it and a brief synopsis?
Sure. Now, this came out in 2015, and that's actually when I saw it first. I did a little refresher course recently. It's great. I really enjoyed it. Directed by Liz Garbus, produced by Amy Hobby. And I actually, in the course of doing this, did read a few reviews, which I hadn't done before. I watched it originally because it was about Nina Simone, and she was someone I wanted to know more about. But a lot of the reviews were similar in that they said, yeah, it's pretty good, solid documentary, but not, it's a bit by the numbers.
Right.
It's it doesn't really reinvent the form in the way that, off the top of my head, Montage of Heck did for Kurt Cobain. That was a real hand grenade that was mixing everything up, This is very much straightforward, story of her life in chronological order, illustrated with a lot of stock footage at the beginning and, archived, just sort of general archive that plays underneath a voiceover, I guess, taken from an interview from Nina Simone. But it's very well done. I think there's nothing wrong with that. I quite like straightforward things. If they're well put together, which this is, and it has enough good footage about a fascinating person, which this certainly does, there's nothing wrong with that. Not everything has to be subverting the medium or tearing up the rule book and flushing it down the toilet. If you're someone as extraordinary as Nina Simone and you have a life as interesting as hers was, then it's okay, I think, to be by the numbers. And Liz Garbus does a very good job. Do
you think it could have happened if it was someone's life was less extraordinary than Nina Simone? If it was by the numbers, do you think they could have carried it as well?
Well,
because I'm sure we'll talk a bit. The synopsis really is her life, isn't it? But we'll
it would be no. I guess you would. I don't know. I mean, it would be weird if it would be weird if it was someone less interesting than her. It would be a bit of a difficult watch. But I quite like. I even like reading through Wikipedia entries for people. It's just nice getting an overview of a person's life.
I think I read a review that compared it to a Wikipedia entry, which I thought was a bit harsh.
Yeah, because it's so snooty. And it's like, well, there's nothing inherently wrong with that. I know what they mean, but at the same time, I quite like documentaries like classic albums. Mm-hmm. I really like music documentaries, I like watching a talented musician perform and talk about their music, and often musicians aren't very good at talking about their music. So it's really great when you have someone to put it in context for you in the form of a documentary and show you some great moments, a couple of things you didn't know perhaps, tell you a few anecdotes. That's all you want, really.
So why did you choose this to talk about today?
I'd always liked her, but I didn't know much about her. Mm. And I was curious, and I think I'd seen a bit of footage of her at the Montreux Jazz Festival in 1976.
That's the one in Germany, is it?
Montreux is in Switzerland, isn't it?
Switzerland.
Yeah. I think so, yeah.
A Germanic language.
It's near there. And I think it was one of the last big appearances that she made. Well, it was it's really strange footage.
Very strange.
And they lean on it heavily in this documentary. Quite rightly. It sort of bookends the
they
whole
open
thing.
with it, don't they? With that extraordinary, she comes on stage, does that really deep bow, pauses, looks to the audience. She really takes her time.
Yeah. She hasn't been on stage for a few years at that point. Yeah. She's already had a lot of problems in her life. She comes out to an ecstatic audience of fans who are pleased to see her back. But as you say, the atmosphere is immediately strange and tense. She comes out, she just eyeballs everyone as if she's angry with them. Yeah. And they talk about the fact that she often did tell off her audiences.
Yeah. And she does at the end, She shouts at someone to take their seat and won't start playing until they do.
Yeah,
Twice.
yeah.
But I kind of like that, running a concert venue. I don't mind people being taught concert etiquette properly.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there's a lot of comedians that would relish the opportunity to do that more. And, some people, it's a difficult thing to do because the last thing you want to do is get the audience angry. Mm. You want them to, most comedians or performers generally are full of little ways to trick the audience into being on your side. You're just an armory of techniques to get them to like you, and then you can take them where you want.
Yeah, she really doesn't give a shit whether
she
they like it.
Doesn't give a shit. And she's just like, you are here. What did she say? I wrote it down. She says at one point, they need to listen about the audience, she says. They need to listen like they do in classical music. Mm-hmm. And if they can't listen, fuck it. Because that's her background and that's her love, classical music. That's how she was trained.
I was very ignorant about her. I had no idea that she wanted to be a classical pianist. And
yes, she was a prodigy.
Not wanted to be, she was a classical
pianist. Absolutely, yeah. That's perhaps what she wanted to be known for.
Right. Yes, she was a prodigy. And so her family was not wealthy, but she was spotted playing at a thing that was organized by the church, a recital in a theater. And a couple of women came along. Women? I don't know if you've heard of women. Miss Muriel Misanovich, and she was a...
I'm liking his notes, Adam.
Yeah, that's pretty good, isn't it?
Yeah.
I tried to
Really
make up
detailed
for
notes on
Yeah.
Miss Muriel Misanovich, and she was so impressed that she kind of wanted to take Nina Simone, Eunice Wayman, as she was then. That was her real name. She wanted to take her under her wing, and she taught her how to play Bach and taught her how to play all this classical music because she could see she was talented enough to get really good at it. And she ended up going to Juilliard, this big fancy music school in New York, applied for a scholarship to study in Philadelphia at the Curtis Institute, and was rejected at that point, and then convinced herself that race was the issue there. Yeah, that she was being discriminated against. Highly possible, right, in those days. And this was the 50s?
Yeah.
So America, very fundamentally divided on racial lines at that point.
So do you think this could have been one of the reasons she went, I mean, jumping ahead a bit here, but she lent quite happily into the civil rights movement and joining forces, becoming friends with Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and everyone else, and being really kind of forthright when her other contemporaries were perhaps like, obviously would support the cause, but we're not going to be involved so much. So some of her early setbacks may have instigated perhaps what she...
I think so. You get that impression. I mean, you get the impression that A, she was hurt as anyone would be by being treated like that and having the usual kind of racial comments aimed at her, being told she would never be able to do this and that because of where she came from and what she looked like. And so that's horrible for anyone to hear, whether it's a comment about your race or not, really. And then I'm sure she was outraged by what was going on in the States at that time. There was so much appalling stuff happening. And then there was this attack on a church in Birmingham, Alabama, 1963, after which she wrote this song, Mississippi Goddamn, which is really extreme. And
Goddamn is like one of the worst swear words for people, isn't it?
No radio play or anything.
Yeah.
And the performance in the documentary is quite electrifying, really.
Yeah.
It really is. When you consider how uptight Americans were then, and still are, about race.
Yeah.
And religion.
Yeah.
You find them both in the same song.
And you think, like, America's a very strangely conservative place culturally in a lot of ways. And it's still, you sort of think of it as being kind of crazy and freewheeling. You do what you want, freedom of speech, blah, blah, blah. But it's easy to shock people out there. It's still predominantly religious, I think.
Absolutely.
A country where belief in God is very important. And there's all sorts of ways to offend Americans. I'm doing a show.
It's like, are you cataloguing different ways to offend Americans?
Yeah, I'm going to go through them now. But like I'm doing a show, just to go off on a tangent, about Bowie at the moment. And he was performing on Saturday Night Live in 1979.
It's an incredible performance.
Yeah, 2 years after that show started. Super hip show. It was like one of the coolest shows on TV. It was actually live, went out late night. Bowie did a song called Boys Keep Swinging, which contains the line, "Other boys check you out." And they muted the line.
Really?
Yeah, because they just thought, oh no, that's too gay. People will be upset
It's
by
pretty gay.
how gay it is. Because the idea of another boy checking you out, no, that's not what boys should be doing. Slap the guy on the back. Don't check him out. Gay. So they muted it. 1979, that is.
Incredible.
So 1963, she writes Mississippi Goddamn. And yeah, she steps into it. Plus the fact that she was a very passionate person anyway.
Absolutely. That comes through a lot in the documentary.
And also someone who struggled, later in the 80s, she was diagnosed as being bipolar. But clearly that, personality, makeup that she had, plus all the things that happened to her, this unhappy marriage that she had, we'll probably talk about. But, she was obviously always going to care passionately and have something to say about what was going on racially in the States at the time. And you had artists like Aretha Franklin and Harry Belafonte, big, well-established, successful artists who were also aligning themselves with the civil rights movement, but able to do so in a way that wasn't quite as extreme.
Wasn't detrimental to their career, basically.
Yeah.
Because Nina, she was losing gigs.
Right.
because of her hard stance on.
Yeah, people just thought,
Again, she just doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
there's trouble. And exactly, yeah, she doesn't give a shit.
So what did you guys think on the other side of the table? Zoe, what was you? Because I didn't know anything about. I loved Nina Simone, and I've got a few of her albums, including the best of Nina Simone.
Mm.
And,
That's where I started. Nothing wrong with that.
Great one.
And but I knew very little about her apart
Yeah.
from the fact that I thought she has an outstanding voice. But this,
I mean, I think I was embarrassingly ignorant about Nina Simone. I knew very little of this, so that was all very interesting. I remember the reaction to the biopic a couple of years ago when Zoe Saldana was cast, and I particularly remember how furious her family were about that, and seeing that Lisa was credited as an exec producer on it.
Her daughter.
Yeah.
I don't know about the biopic. What's that one called?
It's called Nina, and it came out in 2016 and has a 3% Rotten Tomatoes review,
Oh,
which
wow.
probably
3%?
says
that's why I've not seen
really
it.
says a lot about it.
They darkened Zoe Saldana's skin and gave her a sort of big prosthetic nose.
Right.
Yeah.
You don't need to do that with a biopic, do you? You just
Zoe Saldana, I don't know her. Is she...
In Star Trek.
She was in Avatar.
Yeah, she plays
Probably
Uhura
not
in
a
Star
good
Trek.
Oh,
description.
okay. But she's a person of colour, though, right?
She is.
She is.
So, but
considerably
people were
lighter,
upset that
yeah.
that her skin was darkened.
Yes, her family especially. I think.
Mary J. Blige was originally down to play the role, and
Mary
dropped
J
out.
would have been a fantastic shout, actually.
Anyway, I haven't seen that film, but
Sure.
I do remember.
Well, 3% on Rotten Tomatoes
that
Doesn't look good.
that the family and the estate were very upset about it. And I did wonder, because Lisa was so heavily involved in this, whether it would be a little bit sycophantic, but it really isn't.
No.
She's shown to be very flawed, and Lisa's, heartbreakingly honest about the relationship she had with her mother.
Very much. And you would expect someone like her to be a little bit bitter and certainly conflicted, at least,
Yeah.
about her mother and her mother's legacy and the way that her mother is lionized in certain circles after having a childhood that must have been very difficult and very upsetting at certain times. But she's not. She is, as you say, really, she comes across very well and seems to, I mean, I don't know if she sort of sat down and decided like, oh, I've got to get some perspective on it, or if
Yeah.
she was always
Yeah.
that well balanced, I don't know. But yeah, she says that, I'm paraphrasing, but she sort of says, Mum always said that Dad was the best manager anyone could have, because this guy, Andy, that Nina Simone married in the early 60s.
Andy Stroud.
Right, a
Yeah.
retired cop who ended up managing her and playing a large part in making her successful in the beginning of the 60s. But he worked her very hard, and then the relationship transitioned into being something quite abusive.
Yeah.
And her daughter Lisa was there watching a lot of this abuse happen. Her dad at one point smacking her, like leaning across Lisa in the car to smack Nina Simone across the
Horrifying,
face
yeah.
and cut her face open because he had a ring on his finger. And then there's footage in this documentary of Andy just talking about it,
Yeah, he's
fessing
very
up to it.
matter-of-fact.
He's like, yeah, I hit her, and because of the ring, cut her face open. So I took her home and sort of held the skin together and taped it. A week later, there wasn't even a scar.
Unbelievable.
Good job, Andy.
Yeah.
You
know.
should be a paramedic.
Yeah, don't worry about Andy.
That interview's extraordinary.
If he smacks you across the face, he'll sort it out afterwards. So she witnessed all this sort of stuff, and then Nina Simone herself, went in and out of depressions, wasn't always there, but despite all that, she has a very balanced perspective on the whole thing and is still able to appreciate what an extraordinary person and what an extraordinary artist her mother was.
Yeah.
I mean, she starts off the documentary by saying, "My mum was one of the best entertainers in the entire world, but she had a troubled life," and that
Yeah.
prefaces really what happens, how the story unfolds throughout the rest of the story, throughout the rest of her life.
Yes. I saw some criticism of Nick Broomfield's documentary about Whitney Houston recently that was just on, from people saying, oh, well, it didn't focus enough on what a talented performer she was.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, it was mainly the story of her descent.
Don't know why I'm
Thanks to... well, it's so sort of... There are very darkly funny moments in that documentary.
The Whitney one.
Yeah, because of what a massive tool bag, what's his face was?
Bobby
Brown.
Bobby Brown. Just like a total jerk
Yeah.
that you would be in, you try and get away from a person like that at a
He's
party.
like a caricature of a villain.
Yeah.
He's like the kind of person you enjoy being around for 5 minutes and then think, no, I want to go away from you and never see you again.
He's at a good value on stage because he's such a massive Wally.
Yeah.
But don't marry him. Don't fucking marry the guy.
That's the thing about watching these biopics sometimes. It was the same with Amy. You know, you're just almost shouting at the screen. Like, it's like watching a slow-moving car crash and you're like, just go, run away from these people,
Blake.
you know.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. He's worse. He's worse than Bobby Brown.
He's so toxic.
Well, because,
in the Whitney one, I know we're sidetracking, and we need to get Helen's opinion on Nina as well. But in the Whitney one, she was saying the whole documentary starts by saying, "Yeah, Whitney was taking drugs from like age 11, and that was fine. Bobby Brown never did drugs, but he always drank. And when they got together, they did drinks and drugs, and that's what really set everything going wrong." So I was kind of like, right, that's shit, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because if you just do one or the other, you're fine.
Yeah, that's
fine.
Not right at all. Helen, with Nina Simone.
Yeah, well, what hasn't really been said. Always knew her songs. I don't think I ever really appreciated what a musician she was.
Yes.
Her skill on the piano and
amazing.
songwriting and just her as a performer. I'd never really seen much live performances. So to see them and to hear her talk was just like incredible. And
she's really a fascinating performer as well.
Completely. And I particularly love things like she's wearing like jewels on her eyelids. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. People are doing that now. And just her presence on stage, just absolutely captivating. But again, I mean, a standard documentary, but, you know, when you've got a story this good, then you don't need the flashiness. So.
I think that, as you say, it's the live performances that are really extraordinary, and I think they carry the film. There were times when I'd get annoyed when they would, you know, cut the performance to have somebody else being interviewed.
Yeah,
I was sobbing going back to that Montreux performance when she was covering Janice Ian. I think that's perhaps the best live performance I've ever seen. I've never seen. I'm going to cry just talking about it. The emotion, the genuine emotion. It's such a perfect choice of song. I just thought it was just extraordinary. And then I immediately watched it again afterwards, watched the full performance, found it on YouTube. But yeah, then I would get mad at the documentary because they're like, well, don't cut this off.
Yeah. I suppose, though, the nice thing about a documentary like that is that it then directs you to the footage itself. And now with YouTube being what it is, you can find most of those performances.
And it is like 9 minutes long.
Yeah. It is, it's terrific. It's electrifying. You think about an artist like, well, I'm just thinking of another cantankerous artist that sometimes has a fraught relationship with his audience, Van Morrison, who I know was a huge Nina Simone fan, and he did a cover of I Put a Spell on You that is more or less a reworking of hers. And he did a great performance at the Montreux Festival as well.
At the same festival?
No, I think it was maybe a year or two later, in the late 70s. That's really good. If you're a Van Morrison fan listening to this, check that out. But it's nothing like, you know, it doesn't have any of the crackliness that this one did because she was, you know, struggling.
Really struggling.
Mentally. But she still had all her faculties musically.
Yeah.
So it's the whole atmosphere is pregnant with tension, menace, the possibility that she might just go off on someone. She might attack someone, or I don't know what. You know, you sort of imagine like all the things that could go wrong. It feels like this is someone right on the brink.
I saw Hannah Gadsby's show in Edinburgh, Nanette, and she talks in that about how a comedian's job is to create tension and then break that tension for the relief of the audience. But she's got no interest in breaking that tension.
No.
It's just pure tension.
Yeah.
Incredible.
It's really...
We've talked about kind of the pedestrian nature of the documentary, but it actually was nominated for an Academy Award.
Yeah.
For Best Documentary alongside...
Often the documentaries nominated for Academy Awards are pretty pedestrian. Often the ones that win are...
Well, this was up against Amy. I forgot to check who won that year, but Amy won.
Amy won
that, yeah. And I love Amy
It's a better documentary. Yeah. I mean, it's the thing is that what's his face, the director Asif Kapadia, had much better material to work with.
Totally.
There's so little stuff of Nina Simone, especially in the early years. One of the things in the Broomfield documentary about Whitney Houston was that stuff of her singing as a 12-year-old in front of the church choir. And it's just magnetic, this incredible, beautiful person belting it out, 12 years old. And it's very, you know, extra heartbreaking when you know what the ending is going to be. But there's nothing like that of, and in the Amy documentary, there's all that amazing home movie footage.
Yeah.
But there's so little for Liz Garbus to work with as
I guess
far
that's
as
just
Nina Simone.
partly because it's when she was
Didn't
born.
exist.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the first half of the documentary probably has a bit more of that because they have the interviews that she, her own interviews, and you can hear her talking about her own life, and that isn't there so much in the second half, I guess, because of the mental health issues she was having.
Yeah.
But like a line that like stood out to me, I feel like she can express herself very well, and she talks about Andy and says that he wrapped himself around me like a snake. And I just thought that was such a beautiful, eloquent way to express that.
She's got a really good turn of phrase. That's the thing, is that she leans on all these audio interviews because they stand up.
Yeah.
And
really do.
all she has to do is sort of illustrate them with either archive of her performing or stock footage or whatever it happens to be. And it does the job,
And the same with those incredible diaries, because
Yeah.
they're so,
Yeah.
they'd be so great in a book. But
Yes,
maybe
describe
it's not
those.
the
Describe
most-
those, because they are amazing.
Well, she was obviously a prolific diary keeper, and they're just incredible, and you can see her mental state in them. Sometimes they're very organized and put together, and sometimes they look like a nutty wall, don't they? They're all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, and the way they do it, they just sort of have them on screen so you can read them, and they subtitle them when they're scratchily done. And that's not the most dynamic filmmaking, though the diaries themselves are fascinating and so raw and honest.
Amazing too. Do you keep a diary?
No, I never have.
I occasionally do. And the thing is that if you keep a diary or a journal or whatever, you'll know that it's quite difficult to be honest in it. Even if
Oh,
you
really?
think no one will ever read it.
Right.
To actually honestly write down some of the things that you think and that happen
God,
to you
yeah.
is quite a challenge. But it does seem as if she's genuinely
Yeah.
doing that. And it is really compelling just to look
Yeah.
at those static shots of her
Yeah.
diary.
Has everyone here you've seen Montage of Heck, haven't you?
Yes.
You saw it in the cinema.
Yes.
Oh, I bet that was good. I saw it on just at home.
So how's this compared to other biopics for you, music biopics? And
I mean, I guess it's pretty standard. I mean, the only thing that I think, which I think I kind of forgot, was that she was never really that successful, and in her lifetime, she was just kind of always under the periphery, because she was never really a soul performer. She was never really a jazz performer. She was never really a classical performer as such, and she just didn't quite hit the success that you would have expected someone of her caliber to have done. And even now, if you maybe speak to people about Nina Simone, they might go, "Oh, the song from the Muller advert," and it was when her songs were used on adverts. That was when she had her bigger successes, and it kind of doesn't have that thing at the end when you're like, "Oh, well, in the end, it was all great,"
happy
and
ending.
she was
The comeback
mega
concert,
successful.
the tour
yeah.
of Japan.
That's it. It never happened for her. She kind of went off into exile, kind of came back to try and make some money, and it was really, really hard, and people didn't really remember her, and it was really, really sad. I
Again,
think.
there's some
really sad.
There's some good / sad footage of her performing in little clubs where she's clearly
Oh,
Yeah.
God,
a bit addled.
Sort of in a swimming costume.
Yeah, and she's sort of bantering and shouting at the audience. One minute she's happy with them and she's laughing. The next minute she's kind of saying, "I'm not going to do this."
Yeah, she's like, no one believes it's me.
Yeah, and
Because
it's
why would I
really-
be playing here?
Right, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
here's this legendary performer and she's in this little shitty club and
Yeah.
people are just talking and it's very odd. But yes, as you say, My Baby Just Cares for Me, which is, I suppose, her best known track.
from the Muller advert.
Well, that was the
No,
Chanel
that's
one.
like-
Oh.
Back in the
Like,
day, it was Chanel No. 5 ad.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that's the thing that reignited people's interest in her. But as often is the case, she signed away the rights to that track. It was on an album that Little Girl Blue or Little
Yeah.
Girl Lost or something. And she only ever made about $3,000,
Oh, God, that's depressing.
even though it was a huge hit. And so she never got any of that money from that.
Oh, no.
I know, it is a very sad story. Again, it's extraordinary that her daughter is able to be so apparently free from bitterness when she talks about it, because you could easily just be furious with the world if that was your mum,
I've got a couple of things I want to raise before going into popcorn time and going to the scoring.
Yeah.
The first thing is, one thing I really liked about the documentary is that she had a few kind of stalwart people behind her, like her a guitarist friend and some people who
Oh,
playing in
yeah,
bands
Al.
with her.
He was wonderful.
And I kind of think if she didn't have those people, what would she have become without people to say, Nina, you're a mess. We're going to put you up in a house. We're going to clean this shit up for you. We need you to be you because you're awesome. But what would have become of her? She would have died earlier, I guess.
Yes, she didn't disappear. She didn't implode the same way that someone like Whitney or Amy did. So at least she was able to live to a relatively ripe old age.
It's very hard to say. I mean, had things worked out how she wanted them to, had she had the structure and discipline of being a classical pianist, things could have been very different. It seemed like when she was heavily involved in the civil rights movement, she had a real strong community around her. And looking at that part of the documentary, it seemed when she was happiest and most grounded.
Yeah.
Also, there were a lot of people taking care of Lisa, it looked like, at that point. And perhaps Andy took more of a back seat because he didn't care, did he?
He was focused on making her a success.
Should say the people taking care of Lisa was Malcolm X and family, wasn't it?
It was Malcolm X's
Popping
family.
around for tea. For
those
with
people.
The exes.
Yeah.
And then that all came to an end very, very tragically. Maybe that was a big turning point. That was sort of the end of that, idyllic community that they built.
Yeah.
I mean, you sort of watch it and you just think, gosh, she just needs a break. And it's just constantly things kind of come up against her, and yet she kind of keeps on going and keeps on battling. And
she lived longer than I thought she
did,
actually.
Yeah.
And she ended up in the south of France, and you can kind of imagine her pottering around there and
playing the piano
and being relatively happy, I would hope. I don't know.
Well, that's the last thing I wanted to say, because the documentary finishes on the footnotes thing, and I always kind of feel shortchanged by that. Oh, and she died in 2003, and that's the end kind of thing. But I mean, what do we know about her death? Was it?
She got breast cancer, didn't she?
I think so. Yeah.
I think that polished her off eventually.
Yeah, that was.
I mean, again, it felt to me like they were struggling for material for the back end of it. Like you say, they don't have any footage of those weird club gigs, or they don't have any interviews with her at that age. There's very little that they could use, and as you said, they leaned heavily on that Montreux performance to kind of show her fractured mental state. But in the latter years of her life, they didn't.
I think there's a bit of footage of one of the weird club gigs.
I think.
I remember some scratchy VHS stuff.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's
Was she shouting, saying this place is a dump?
Yeah, that's right.
It's almost like no one really cared towards the end. That she just kind of slipped away out of public consciousness, and
it's one of those things where people are like, Nina Simone's died. I thought she died.
She had a reputation for being hard to handle, and she clearly said what she thought, and
didn't give a shit.
Didn't give a shit. Was difficult, but then the point is made that if a male performer behaved that way, it would be tolerated in perhaps a way that it wasn't for her. And you can think of countless. I mean, I mentioned Van Morrison before. There's a lot of stories about things that he's done and the way he treats people. But people put up with it because they think, it's Van Morrison. He's a genius. She was a genius. And it's weird that there wasn't someone, I don't know, Van Morrison, maybe he doesn't have the same mental struggles.
He died at 27, didn't he?
Van?
Yeah.
He's still with us.
He's still going.
Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm thinking.
Thinking of
what? Did we miss something?
Jim,
I'm thinking of your man from the door. Jim, I'm thinking of Jim.
I think with Van Morrison is still alive, we'd just like to point out.
I was thinking
Brown-eyed girl. Okay, I know. Sorry.
I think with that, that is kind of, it's rock and roll, isn't it? Rock and roll is given an excuse for pretty much everything. You can do whatever you like. It's rock and roll. Whereas she wasn't rock and roll, even though she was almost a rock star. And she was a woman, and she was also a black woman as well, which apparently
it's the
gave
triple
her no
whammy.
license. I know.
It's the bad luck whammy. I know. It's but the message that keeps coming across in all these things is that if you're at all fragile and talented, then being famous probably isn't the best thing for you.
It kind of exacerbates your...
That's what that Janis Ian song's about, which is why it's so heartbreaking when she's performing it. That to me was really the...
What are the lyrics of the Janis Ian song that...
I can't.
You can't. I wanted to sing it just in the key of Nina Simone.
The lyrics
on YouTube.
Sometimes if you're really talented, but you've got some problems in your head, things can go really badly for you, and you might end up wishing you were dead. Does it go like that?
Yeah, that's it.
Bringing a tear to my eye.
I'm crying again.
I think at that point, let's go to a brief popcorn break before going on to the scores.
I love it.
We have some lovely popcorn from the wonderful Popcorn Shed. If you'd like to...
I get stuck in my tea.
Is this caramel popcorn?
This is This is pecan pie.
Pecan pie popcorn. Caramel popcorn with golden roasted pecans.
It's going to drive people with misophonia.
What does misophonia mean? I've never heard that word before.
Misophonia is where you get upset at the sound of people eating.
Ah. I used to be irritated by that on Blue Peter when they cook something and then
Didn't eat it.
I don't like it when presenters have clicky mouths.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not going to say the name of the guy I'm thinking of, but there's one BBC presenter who's got the clickiest mouth. It's like he's eaten some paste before he's gone on screen, and all you can hear is...
I saw Anne Hathaway on stage. I think she was in the country filming Batman, and she was on Joseph Gordon-Levitt's thing at the South Bank, his
yes.
record show. And she came out and read a poem, but she had such a dry mouth. And I was just, have a glass of water, Anne Hathaway. You're a professional. It was very upsetting.
Clicky mouth. You'd think like
Such
they'd be
clicky
able to
mouth.
hear it or feel it. I'm going to eat my popcorn now, listeners. Here we go.
I've
I
today.
used to eat so much caramel popcorn.
Oh,
That
yeah.
was my thing of choice. Giant bag.
Yeah, smuggle it into the cinema. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then at a certain point, I was like, wow, I'm giant. Why have I got so fat so fast?
I had to give it up after I had pain in one of my teeth for ages.
Mm.
And I kind of dug it out, and there was quite a big bit of a popcorn. kernel
Bonus
was
popcorn.
in there. Yeah. That's when
Save that one for later.
Realised to probably
Oh,
put down on
mate.
the bag of nights that I was doing
Oh,
on a show I was working on.
I think I had it in my head that maybe popcorn was a relatively healthy snack.
Yeah, except
it's
if you cover
corn.
it in toffee.
Yeah, no one is paid
Or
in
in
sugar.
salt
Yeah.
as well. Salt and sugar, the two healthiest toppings.
We will go to the scoring system.
Scores on the doors.
The unique Flixwatcher.
There's a big spreadsheet.
scoring.
Kobe is showing me on a screen in this room a giant spreadsheet, very professionally arranged and being displayed beautifully on the screen here in the St. Pancras room in King's Place.
So you got the scores out of 5 for each of the categories.
Scores out of 5.
First up is the recommendability score.
I highly recommend this documentary about Nina Simone. I'd give it a recommendability score of 5.
5, straight out of the gate.
Sure, what's not to like? She's amazing. And it's nicely put together, I think.
Zoe.
I don't think there's many people that you couldn't recommend this film to, if you're judging it on that basis. So I would say 4.
Bit mean.
Helen.
I'm going to go with 5 as well. I think this is a fantastic introduction to Nina Simone for anyone who's got the best of and likes the song or just really wants to see like a fantastic musician, because really that was amazing.
That's what she is.
Yeah, I mean, even if you don't really enjoy the stock doc kind of bits, you can always skip to those and just watch the performances in a nice little montage.
But it's a good story. I don't think
Yeah.
it doesn't flag, it's good. It's well told.
So you're giving it 5.
Yeah.
I'm going to go side with Zoe here, I think.
Yeah.
Gonna dock a point.
Yeah, dock a point, because I think I just want a bit more dynamism
I
from the
agree,
documentary.
yeah.
And when it comes up against Amy, I just think that's that high. Asif Kapadia, what I did with Senna and Amy, I think are like the high watermark of.
Yeah, but I mean that wouldn't stop me recommending it.
Oh, no.
Hence my 5.
Repeat viewing score. How likely are you to rewatch it? And
Well,
what would you give that out of
I
5?
think that is where it suffers because of the way it's put together. It's
Yeah.
not something that you're going to watch over and over again. Like
it's a thing. It's a problem with documentaries, though. In general,
Yeah,
I think
we've
they don't
come
tend to
across that.
get.
I don't
high
know.
view-
It
I
depends
watch
on the documentary.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Pink Floyd classic albums, Dark Side of the Moon, every year. I watch it every year.
so that's a 5 out of 5 for you for repeat viewing score for Pink Floyd.
for Pink Floyd. For
Yeah.
this one, I mean, I'd be happy to rewatch it, and so maybe 3.
Okay. Zoe.
So my high watermark for a rewatchable music documentary would be Anvil, the story of Anvil.
I've not seen that yet, but
It's amazing, and
I
it
haven't
makes me
seen
happy every time I
It's
watch
good.
it.
It's good. I haven't seen it for a while.
This, I don't think I would ever watch again, but I would certainly watch the performances on YouTube, and I have watched
Yeah.
some of them several times since. So on that basis, I guess I can't do half points, right?
you can go to
Yeah,
decimal
Then
places.
2.5.
Look at the spreadsheet. You can do like 25,000 decimal places if you
Absolutely.
want. You can do pi. I'm going to give it pi.
So that's 3.124.
3.14159. And then loads of other numbers.
That's my score.
Sorry.
Yeah, you've put it.
Oh, do you want to give it pi? Adam?
Put it in Helen's. I'll give it pi. Yeah. Thanks, Kobe. Kobe is typing out pi. It'll be a while. He's typing it to 1 million decimal places.
Helen.
I mean, if we're talking about music documentaries that we've watched the most, I've probably seen Blur's Starshaped
Oh my god, I
so many
love that.
times.
But I've only got it on
where
VHS.
on VHS it doesn't work
I
properly.
haven't seen that for a while.
That was so good.
I didn't even know one existed.
The funniest
At least
thing ever.
I haven't seen it all the way through for about a year, but I regularly someone has very kindly put clips of it on YouTube, and you can
gonna
watch
watch
them
that
all.
later.
So
There's some good stuff of all brand vomiting, isn't there? I
yes,
remember.
there's lots
So
of
good.
vomiting. That's good.
Alex James is just hilarious, isn't it?
It's-
He's drinking that cup of tea and with it out of a cup
with the
and
shaky
saucer.
van, yeah.
And Graham's like this, and Alex is just.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
It's
That's no good on a
hilarious.
podcast, was it? I did a mime, everybody.
Yeah,
It was really funny.
Shuffled in the
It
chair.
was as if Blur were in the room for a while. It was amazing.
So it's sadly not star-shaped for me. I think I probably would watch it again, but not for a while. So I'm going to go straight down the middle with a 2.5.
Yeah, I think 2.5, and I think I would, when I do watch it, I would kind of fast forward to the, I don't want to say the good bits, but to the performances and that kind of.
Fast forward to the really funny
It
bits.
seems a bit callous, doesn't it? When you're talking about someone's life.
Yeah, that's right.
Skip to the end, skip to the highlights.
This bit's boring. These 10 years. Skip that.
So small screen score, this is how much do you feel it's perfect for watching on a Netflix arena, i.e. on your TV or a smaller screen? Or do you feel you should watch it in a cinema?
It doesn't need to be seen in the cinema.
No.
It's perfectly fine on a postage stamp sized screen. That's how I'd recommend you watch it.
People do that. We've had people who've come on and gone. So I watched it on ever-decreasing screen sizes. So I started off on a TV, and then I did a laptop, and then I did my phone.
And then I put my phone in someone else's house and watched it from across the street. And it was even better. So if it doesn't matter how small the screen is, then the score is high.
Yeah.
5. It's a 5.
It's a 5. Zoe.
I completely agree. You absolutely don't need to sit in the cinema. 5.
Helen.
I'm going to go 5 as well. And also saying, again, this is one thing that Netflix is quite good at, is there are a lot of documentaries hidden on there that, you might have missed, or you just might go, I'm not really sure about that, but this is definitely one to give a go.
Yes, if you search up best music docs when you're in Netflix, you'll get
is there a
loads
job
of good
load there?
things. You what?
I didn't know there's that many in there.
Yeah, there's a few. There's some good ones.
Need to do some searching. Small screen score, I'd say I'm going to give it 4.5, only because I think the sound in my house could be better.
That's the problem with your house.
Yeah,
Yeah, it
I
is.
mean,
Not
Yeah.
Netflix.
True. Echoey house. Engagement score. How engaged were you whilst watching it? Do you feel the need to be checking Wikipedia, or do you stopping and starting the show all the time?
Beep, beep, beep. If I'm honest, I watched it in several sittings.
Yeah.
It was perfectly good in that way.
So you didn't feel like you needed to sit down and watch it from start to finish, otherwise
I mean, it's always better, isn't it? But no, you don't need to. So does that mean it's a high score?
It's quite a low score.
Low score for engagement.
So how much you were engaged a
Yeah,
little
I
bit
guess
as well.
I was certainly engaged with it and looked forward to, but I unfortunately watch a lot of things that way. So, I tend to watch things when I'm on the train, especially music docs, which I can't often get past the other members of my household because they're like, what? No, come on, let's watch. What do they want to watch? I don't know, romantic comedies. But a 3 then. Middle of the road, 2.5. I'm going to go middle of the road.
2.5. Zoe.
yeah, I think this is another obvious 2.5 because parts of it are extremely engaging and parts of it aren't that engaging at all. And I'd say it's pretty much split. Yeah.
Adam's gone back to the popcorn there.
Come back, having a little chew.
I think the live performances are extraordinary,
Yeah.
and some of the rest of it is, maybe I looked at my phone once or twice.
Helen.
I'm going to give it a 5. I was absolutely, completely absorbed in this from the
Fantastic.
performances and not knowing that much about her life anyway. Yeah, 5. I didn't touch my phone once.
Oh.
I'm very easily distracted.
I was doing a fair bit of Wikipediaing going on, but trying to stay away from the spoiler of when did she actually die. And that was the thing I was trying to avoid whilst researching.
Again, I'm not sure if you can count it as a
not
spoiler
really a
when
spoiler.
it's someone's actual life.
True. But I mean, let's briefly before we finish. She died in 2003. I don't remember that at all happening in the news or anything like that. So that's
It's true, isn't it? Nowadays, no disrespect to the people I'm going to mention, but recently Grant Hart from Husker Du died, very sadly. I love that band, but not a massively well-known band. But you wouldn't
I
know it
didn't
from
know
the
that.
from the fuss on social media, and
think
quite rightly.
I think it's social media, isn't it? That's what's changed
Yeah,
from 2003 to now.
And, Walter Becker from Steely Dan. I mean, again, great band, sadly missed. But Six Music was like playing non-stop Steely Dan the whole day or something after he died. And you think Nina Simone was of a similar, if not greater stature. And as you say, there was very little fuss made.
Yeah, to the fact that 4 of us around this table didn't know that she
I think
died
I was
then.
very self-absorbed in 2003.
It was a different time.
Yeah.
Engagement 4, because I was Wikipediaing. And that gives us an overall score of 3.8385.
Love it.
Which is
I
Quite strong.
That's probably.
that's a good. I think that's a good score. That.
I mean, I think it's a well-made but conventional documentary. But Nina Simone is extraordinary.
Yeah.
That's what.
I think that's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
Got some.
I give her 5 stars.
We got some tweeted people who tweeted it, their reviews. Helen, do you want to take these?
So yeah, we've got the Scheitgeist pod. So they've got excellent portrait of a complex artist, definitely rewatchable, and they've gone for 5 stars on that one.
Whoa.
They loved it.
Simon Renshaw, hi Simon. He's gone a high 2 stars from me. Is 2 stars really high?
Hi. Maybe he's just saying, hi, 2 stars from me.
Yeah, one to be added to the ever-increasing pile of distinctly average and very ordinary biopics of extraordinary people. Ooh, a
There's a
missed
couple punch
opportunity.
there.
I kind of
Can
agree
I-
with that.
Can I just address at this point the way
I'm not
that
as mean.
the divergence in the pronunciation of the word biopic? Now, in my mind, it's pronounced biopic because it's a biographical picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I know a lot of people like to pronounce it biopic. But that to me
That's
makes
like
it
myopic,
sounds
yeah.
like it's about myopia.
Yeah, no, you're definitely right.
I suffer from biopia, which is a narrowing of truth and meaning for the sake of telling a story of someone's life in an hour and a half.
That's a fair point. Guys, can you sign off? Let us know where we can find you online on the Twitters and the internet and stuff like that. And say goodbye to the crowd.
Love it. What am I supposed to do now?
Say where we can find you online.
Where? Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's if you want people to find you. I don't
Googling
know.
probably.
Who cares? Honestly, there's no need. The Adam Buxton podcast is what I would direct people to, available from the Acast platform or iTunes and usual outlets.
Zoe.
Check out the awesome comedy and podcasts we have on at King's Place, which is kingsplace.co.uk. And if you want to, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Zozrat.
And we'll link to all you guys on the show notes anyway, so people can just scroll down and click on the links.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on.
Hey,
Cheers,
thanks for
guys.
having me.
Cheers, guys.
Bye.
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 Hi, guys. Hope you enjoyed the show there. Please do check all our beautiful guests out on the show notes, and links to their Twitter account and their iTunes for the podcast are there. And also do check out the website because that's where a lot of their information is. Please don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes. And of course, we want to big up Tony and Jay and also Greg, our editors from GL Productions. Of course, please big up Mighty People for the tunes you can hear now. And at the start of the podcast, find us on Twitter at FlixWatcherPod and visit our website, flixwatcher.tv.
Phones off, please, guys. Airplane mode, if you would.